Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we discuss the Imperial Fists chapter and their mistrust of the Adeptus Custodes. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, one of the things I just love about the lore is no matter how many times you've read something, or how many months or years have passed, you can still read something you've seen a dozen times before, and somehow it just strikes your imagination anew. Something stands out in a way it just didn't before. And well, that happened to me last week, during our Chapter War Week special. As I was browsing through my 8th edition Imperial Fist Codex supplement, something really caught my attention more than I remembered, and it really had my mind beginning to wonder. As we know, the Imperial Fist chapter is eternally linked with their formidable battle station, the Phalanx. The supreme vessel Rogel Dawn presented to his father upon their reunion. Now, the origins of the Phalanx are still shrouded in no small amount of myth. One explanation is its creation dates back to the Dark Age of technology, that it was found and brought back into working order by Rogel Dawn himself, which is the history supported by the Imperial Fist Codex supplement. Another explanation we received was in the early years of the Heresy series, with the Lightning Tower audiobook, and this was that Rogel Dawn actually constructed it himself, though for me it seems more likely that this appears to have been retconned. However, what we do know for fact is that after Rogel Dawn greeted the Emperor of Mankind, he gifted the Phalanx to his newly found father. However, the Emperor returned it to his son's service, making it the mobile fortress monastery for the Imperial Fists Legion. In the years following the Horus Heresy, the Phalanx saw a gradual decline, no longer holding a legion's worth of Astartes, and the millions of servants and crew that came along with it. Vast portions of the Phalanx simply became abandoned, falling into disrepair as the years passed. As the Imperium became further departed from its golden age, more knowledge too begun to be lost, making any repairs attempted all the harder. And by the time of the fall of Cadia, barely a tenth of the Phalanx's systems were still operational. And in the aftermath of the Gate's destruction, the Phalanx limped back to the Throne World, where the newly returned Rabute Guilliman ordered any repairs that could be done begun, determined to see the symbol of his brother once more a bastion of the Imperium. And this is where it all gets pretty intriguing, as it's said within the Imperial Fist Codex supplement that the Custodes opened up the much rumoured and mysterious Dark Cells, gifting the Imperial Fists a long-lost technology that they believed may be able to repair the Phalanx. And it worked, astoundingly so. The Phalanx blossoming back to function in ways not seen since the days of the Heresy. Chambers coming to life that they had no idea still existed. However, as awesomely mysterious as this event in itself is, what really strikes my imagination is the revelation after, a line that really stuck out to me. Some openly speculated about the possibility of an ulterior motive behind the Adeptus Custodes' aid. Captain Lysander insisted that security vetting protocols be redoubled throughout the ship's crews and systems, lest spying eyes had been left amongst them. Now this on the surface seems incredulous, that an Imperial force could have any mistrust at all towards the Emperor's own Custodes, the literal symbol of his power. And even more so that it's the Emperor's fabled Praetorians, the chapter who, in name at least, have been based upon the Throne World, the legion who stood strong against the War Master, fortifying the Imperial Palace. Now to some this could perhaps be explained by the many arguments that the two forces got into during the heresy. While both the Fists and the Custodes were undoubtedly loyal, they did butt heads many times throughout the months and years that Dawn was remoulding the palace. However, for me, I don't see that as being the case. If any of those conflicts are remembered, they pale in comparison to the good that the two forces performed in the Emperor's name, standing true and defiant against the traitors. And honestly, most of the heresy has been lost to myth. It's one of the main things that Guilliman has been appalled about upon his return, the sheer lack of known history. While the Custodes themselves have long been expected to know everything of the past, it's actually changed a fair bit over the past few years, to even them viewing the heresy as a long-lost mythical age. But even if those arguments were remembered, would that really be a reason for the Imperial Fists to doubt the Emperor's Custodes, because they had one or two heated arguments 10,000 years ago? Well, I don't think so. So what else? What else could be the reason? Well, as it turns out, something very interesting. Within the novel The Regent's Shadow, part of the Watchers of the Throne series by author Chris Wright, there's a very interesting passage that perhaps could give us our explanation. Now here the Phalanx has just returned to the Throne World in the aftermath of Cadia's destruction, and the custodian Valerian is reflecting on the matter, where we're given a very intriguing glimpse into his thoughts regarding the Phalanx itself. Being a component of Terra's standing forces, and being manned by Adeptus Astartes, made Phalanx of great interest to us. I had heard tentative voices raised in our councils, suggesting that it should be taken over by the 10,000. The reasoning being that a single chapter of Space Marines, no matter how storied, could not possibly hope to man and maintain a machine that had been over large even for the 7th Legion in its prime. So, unbelievably, the Adeptus Custodes have discussed taking over the Phalanx. Well, if somehow word or rumour of that had got out, I think that would most certainly be reason for the Imperial Fists to be more than a little wary of the Custodes. And honestly, if you were an Imperial Fist who knew this, and then the Custodes offer out some form of ancient artifact from the vaults of Terra itself to repair the Phalanx, well, that's going to make you more than a little suspicious. It's like a catch-22, you need the assistance, you can't turn it down. The sheer possibility of restoring the Phalanx to its glory, but you just can't not be wary of the intention behind it. Are the Custodes offering this aid so that once it's repaired they can claim it for themselves? Now how and if the Imperial Fists found out about this information is hard to know. It's clearly not something the Custodes would announce to them. However, the Emperor's Custodes are absolute in their service to the Emperor, so utterly convinced that they are above the mere savage Astartes, that honestly it wouldn't surprise me for a custodian to mention it offhand, pretty blankly as well, that the Phalanx would be better suited under their control. Regardless of if or how the Imperial Fists did find out about it, it's crazy to think that these discussions have even actually taken place, that on some level the Custodes have voiced this opinion, and clearly debated it. On a practical term, I have to admit it probably does make sense. Having Phalanx manned by a single chapter is a bit of a waste, as seen by most of the Phalanx being left to deteriorate over the past 10,000 years. Having the Custodes man it makes sense in at least practical terms, 10,000 over 1,000. And you would expect the Sisters of Silence to accompany them. Now obviously the Custodes still have to man the Imperial Palace, but you get my point. There would be more Emperor's Talons manning the Phalanx than just the Imperial Fists. It'd certainly be an image worthy of the Emperor's Talons, not only the elite fighting force of the Imperium, but also turning up on the most elite fighting vessel the Imperium has. That's about as perfect an image as you can get. The Emperor's power in all of its glory. I don't see any foe being able to stand up against the Custodes, let alone if they turned up on the Phalanx. I mean, that's a game changer right there. But in reality, how exactly would they expect to take the Phalanx from the Imperial Fists, the legion who were given it by the Emperor's own decree? Even with it being the Custodes, I just can't see the Imperial Fists agreeing to it. Even if Guilliman tried ordering it, I just can't see it. It would result in a war. If Guilliman forced it, then it would sow an unsurmountable amount of distrust within the other Primarchs' lineages, proving many of Guilliman's doubters right. Now it is worth saying I don't think Guilliman would ever consider it. For all his falling out with Rogel to come, I don't think he would ever countenance taking away the Phalanx from his sons. He could undoubtedly see the merit of it having more men, but I think it's more likely he'd order more chapters to be stationed on it. Maybe a few of the Ultima founding successors. However, again, it's not really Guilliman who is the focus here. It's the Custodes. For the record, Valerian, whose thoughts have revealed this information to us, does follow up that thought with himself thinking the idea is foolish, that the Custodes are in only a barely better position than the Imperial Fists. He actually thinks if it should be given to anyone, then it should be the Imperial Navy. But his faults aside, the fact remains it is something that's clearly within the thought process of the main Custodes Council, which absolutely must include Trajan Valoris himself, who just happens to be a High Lord of Terror to boot. With the growing discontent regarding Guilliman's growing power base, having more Astartes bestriding the Imperium than ever before, could the High Lords decide to take away perhaps its most powerful weapon? Unlikely, admittedly, but something that's no longer impossible. These snippets or teases do sometimes come back into focus in a big way, years down the line when they've almost been completely forgotten, when for all our surprise we look back and see that the seeds were sown for years. Could we one day see the Custodes make a play for the Phalanx? Well, I don't know if it'll ever come to pass, but I do know now that it's been discussed, and the Imperial Fist chapter is worried enough to raise their security protocols. But as always everyone, what do you think? Is this matter serious enough for the Imperial Fists to have to raise their security? Can you believe the Custodes have already discussed it? And in coming to their conclusion, do you think they could one day make a move to take control? That they even have the authority to do so? Is this something Valoris would have to take to the High Lords of Terror? Or would he make an appeal straight to Guilliman himself? And can you see any situation where this will be decreed? That for the first time in its existence, the Phalanx will not be controlled by the Sons of Dawn. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.